was expecting at least something, right? At least that can make it exciting, that can make it interesting. But all we got in today's announcement for the new immigration quotas was nothing, nothing of that sort. It's basically the same. Yesterday, Yesterday, Marc Miller came out and he announced this grand immigration plan. A lot of strategy there, a lot of, as I said, fancy words there, but couldn't really make out much from what exactly it was supposed to be. And then today's immigration. But again, yesterday also, if you watched my live yesterday, and we were discussing this yesterday as well, that I didn't really expect any changes to the immigration quotas. And one of the reasons for not expecting any changes to the immigration quota is only because there is an increasing amount of negativity around immigration at this point of time in Canada within the market itself. The housing crisis and obviously the politics not going the way it should be going. Liberals do not have much of the favor of the general public. Elections are just around the corner. So with all of this, I wouldn't have imagined liberals wanting to announce another big number, another big announcement of increased immigration when already the market sentiment is not in the favor of immigration. At least it's a bit downplayed. There's more negative sentiment there at this point of time rather than positive. Housing being one of the major criteria there. So the expectation was that they will stay with the same numbers, and they did. Further, the expectation was that they may increase some refugee or protected persons number. Surprisingly, they did not. So they have actually stayed exactly the same that was announced last year by Sean Fraser in the multi-year immigration plan. So you see, when they announce the multi-year immigration plans, they announce up to 3 years in advance, right? So that all the government departments, all the different third-party stakeholders, everybody can then align their targets accordingly. And obviously, whenever the announcements are then refreshed on the 1st of November each year, 31st of October or 1st of November each year, they are already, the immigration minister, the sitting immigration minister, then has the discretion to change the numbers. And that's what Sean Fraser has done in the last couple of years and before that as well. You have to keep in mind, when Justin Trudeau came into power, the Liberals came into power, I think 2016, was it? Yes. The immigration targets at that point of time was about 300,000. So you can imagine now the immigration targets for 2025 are at 500,000, 500,000. It's a huge number. It's a huge number, not in the big context of things, but in the context of Canada, it's a huge number. Hey, the country's population is 40 million people. So you can imagine when they increase 200,000 people on the quotas in a span of less than 10 years, it's a big number. But let's, I'll first play a clip from Marc Miller of today's announcement while he was making the announcement. Then we will go through the numbers, and then I will give you my opinion. Hey, that's what I'm here for, right? To share my opinion with you. But when I share this clip with you of the video, please bear in mind, this is not the entire 50-60 minutes of the press briefing. A lot of it was in French. I don't understand it, so obviously it went over my head. But I did take small snippets. Don't worry, I have not taken it out of context. I'm still giving you the context there. So it's a small snippet of something which would be of interest to you and interest to me. But I've also posted the link of the entire video in the description box of the YouTube live, and you're more than welcome to watch it completely. But let's hear it from Marc Miller.
Canada's population is aging. Immigration is now driving most of our population growth and labor force stability. I'm pleased to share that Canada intends to maintain its target of welcoming 485,000 new permanent residents in 2024 and 500,000 in 2025. Starting in 2026, the number of newcomers we aim to welcome will stabilize at 500,000, allowing for a sustainable population growth. While today's announcement is about permanent resident levels, a whole-of-government approach also means taking a close look at temporary resident immigration and making sure they align with our capacity to ensure sustainable growth. This is something we'll be looking at more intensely going forward. We've consulted widely on both the number of permanent residents in Canada and the number that we should welcome, and the balance between the categories of the newcomers. We look at perspectives and priorities of federal partners, regional representatives, Indigenous community stakeholders, as well as the general public. Canadians are telling us to get better organized, and do it with provinces and territories. That means, as I mentioned, it means we align more closely with our immigration with labour needs. Canada continues to suffer a significant shortage, for example, of construction workers. In 2022, the industry reported needing 95,000 more workers across the country as people age out of the industry. We believe newcomers are part of the solution for increasing housing supply in particular. The program that we announced 3 months ago, for example, we're targeting candidates who can help fill labor shortage in the industry and actually build the homes that we've made ambitious plans for. One more question.
Some may read into some of these announcements that the government wants to start to curb the trend toward two-step immigration, given the number of temporary foreign workers that come here and then apply for permanent residency. Is that your intention whatsoever?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that as sort of a principled stated intention. It is clear that in some of the schemes that we are hearing from people that are entertaining false hope in some countries, that you come to Canada on a temporary basis, roll the dice, and perhaps you become Canadian. We have to be a little more clear that saying, for example, if you're an international student, you're there to study, does not necessarily guarantee you a path to permanent residency, a job, or Canadian citizenship. Now, the complete reverse of that argument is not necessarily true as well. I mean, the reality is we aren't here simply to get some $40,000 a year from people and see them fritter away and contribute their talents elsewhere. So if there's a market logic to keeping people, that should certainly be entertained and encouraged. But again, on the margins, there's been some abuse on that, and something we're trying to stem. It's going to require more than me. It's going to require provinces, territories, and the institutions involved to do this in a way that we get it right. I got to go.
So he's got to go, obviously. But that was a bit of a gist. As I said, a lot of the press briefing and the question and answer was in French. I don't really understand that, so I lost sense of what was happening. But nothing much came out of this. At least there were obviously a couple of things. Firstly, that there is a reiteration on the fact that international students, when they come to Canada, they should come to Canada with a very clear understanding that coming to Canada as an international student does not mean that this is a guaranteed pathway for permanent residence. This has been said and repeated over the the whole week. I keep saying Sean Fraser. Marc Miller has now come for press briefings thrice this week. And at all the three events, he said the same thing, that international students do not have a guaranteed PR pathway. Now, when they say this statement, a lot of people assume that henceforth, now onwards, there is no guarantee. But that is not true. Student pathway was never a guaranteed PR pathway. It was never there. It's only a narrative that the agents, the unscrupulous institutions have created, which gives you an impression that if you study in Canada, you will become a PR. This you will become a PR is not guaranteed. Nobody tells you that. Nobody gives you this honest truth. On the contrary, they tell you go to study in Canada, you will definitely become a PR. Now, the reality is that coming to Canada as an international student most definitely gives you an advantage. It gives you an advantage in terms of the scores, in terms of the CRS points. It gives you an advantage that you now have access to several PNP programs, better scores in Express Entry. It also gives you advantage with the fact that you get work permit. You will then be able to apply for, you get additional points for Canadian work experience. And you also have access to the employers based on which you can apply for PNPs. So this narrative has to sort of, people have to be shaken up to understand this. But that is what has been said repeatedly during this week. But let's talk about the numbers, because that's what we are here for. Okay, so these are the numbers. Let me see if I can make them even bigger. Yes. So nothing much has changed here, but what is a big change here is specification of French category numbers. Now, please, before you jump to the conclusion that this 26,100 number that has now been included is going to be an additional number. No, this is not an additional number. This is the same number. It is still within the targets of 485,000 permanent residents to Canada through for this year. But this number is related to the fact that this is the target of IRCC and Canada to encourage Francophone immigration outside the Quebec region. Now, what happens is that we never usually on the date of 1st of November, we never have the Quebec quotas, because Quebec, as per the Canada-Quebec Accord, they have the right to finalize their own numbers. They have the right to identify how many people they want to bring in and their immigration program. So these numbers are usually not known. You will come to know of these numbers only by March, later next year. And all IRCC is trying to say, and it is over here, if I just scroll down on this particular page, it says the overall French-speaking permanent resident admissions outside Quebec indicated here represent the number of admissions required to meet the 6% target in 2024, 7% in 25, and 8% in 2026. Now, these admissions are not in addition to the overall plan target. So it basically is included. So these will be part of your category-based draws. These will be part of regular invitations as well. So for example, IRCC issues a regular draw or conducts a regular express entry draw. And let's say the score is 500 and 3,000 invitations are issued. And within those 3,000 invitations, if there are 1,000 people who are French speakers, who are Francophones, and who have got a score of 500 plus on the basis that their French scores are pretty good, then those numbers are included in this number. Oh, let me scroll down up here. It is included in this number of 26,100. In addition to that, of course, because they have now specified that this year their target is to encourage 6% of immigrants to come to Canada who are Francophones outside the Quebec area. Therefore, this number has been specified. Until now, this number was never specified. But this year, they've absolutely stated 6% for this year, 7% for next year, and 8% for 2025. So this is one big change that we have seen, where they have absolutely specified Francophones or Francophone immigration. This also then tells you, I mean, more than a year back, we have been talking about this. Take up French, take up French, take up French. I only hope and pray at least some of you out there have taken that to heart and gone through it, because even within express entry, with this kind of an advantage to French speakers or Francophones, it basically means this number has to come from somewhere, right? If they are now identified 6% Francophones, if they have identified this large number to go to Francophones, then this number has to come from somewhere. It has to be bisected from somewhere. And it probably will come from the obviously from the economic pathways, some of it from the PNPs, some of it from the express entry, and of course from any other area that they can get. So this is one big change that we have seen for this year's target. The number still at 485,000. The low range, so mind you, though the target is 485,000, at any point of time, if IRCC wants to further reduce it, they can still do it by 50,000, because the low range is 430. But if at any point of time they get comfortable with things, they can actually bump it up to 532,500. Which is not a bad number, because even this year, though the target was 465,000, I'm absolutely certain that the actual number, which we will find out very close to the end of the year, probably early next year, of the target that is achieved for 2023, you will realize it is very close to 500,000. They went way ahead and over the 465,000. Anyways, as you can see, for 2025, the target is now 500,000. Again, no change there. This was already announced last year itself by Sean Fraser. But for 2026, there has been no increase at all. So this is what I meant when I said that they are gently pressing the brakes. They're gently, bringing this whole bandwagon of increasing the numbers of immigrants every year. That number is now reduced. I wouldn't say it's reducing. It's basically stabilizing. So now 500,000 for 2025 and 500,000 for 2026. In a way, that's not I wouldn't call it great news. I wouldn't call it something to be happy about or ecstatic about, and the reason for that is, each year, number of international students who come to Canada, each year, number of foreign workers who come to Canada, and collectively, if you're already aware, there are more than 2 million people in Canada who are temporary residents. This includes international students, foreign workers, people who are here on mobility pathways, international mobility pathways, all of them. Actually, that number is close to 2.5 million, but I'm going to be conservative today. I don't want to sort of scare you guys. So that number is at around 2 million. If you have 2 million temporary residents and more actually in Canada right now. If I take, because I do not have the exact breakdown as to how many children, how many adults, how many are closed work permit holders, how many open work permit holders. That breakdown is not available. So, but just for the sake of argument, for the sake of discussion, if there are 2 million temporary residents in Canada at this point of time today, and that number is always increasing because they're not curbing the international students. It's not like there is a restriction on the number of international students who can come to Canada. It's a free for all, right? And as the number keeps going, this year it's about 900,000 international students. So you can imagine the number going up. If you have about 2 million people, out of these 2 million people, let's say 10% or 20% want to go back to their home country. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, right? That's about 1.6 million remaining. Out of 1.6 million remaining, let's say 200,000 to 300,000 people are children, obviously, right? Because that is also number included. That you are still left with 1.3 million people. Let's say for whatever reason, another 300,000, we will just discard them off. You still have a huge number of 1 million people who are in Canada who would like to become permanent residents, but the quotas, they are not in your favor. Now, when you look at this number of 485,000, that 485,000 is not for everybody. This is a total number. That doesn't mean if you are a CEC or a federal skilled worker, you're an international student, then you're looking at 485. The number that you're pretty much looking at is this 110,770. That is federal high skill, which is express entry, plus provincial nominee programs. These are the two numbers you're looking at. So if I total this 110, so you're looking at roughly 220,000. That is the available quota for people who are inside Canada as temporary residents, 220,000. Of course, there are few economic pilots as well, which you can look at, but that's not too many. I'll talk about that. Atlantic immigration programs, surprisingly, that number has dropped. It has dropped from last year. I don't know why they would do that, but that number has come down. So people who are really pinning their hopes on Atlantic immigration program, you guys also need to understand that this is now a reduced capacity. So the sooner you can get your endorsement letters, the sooner you will be able to get on your way. This number, 110,770, is actually been increased from last year's announcement. Last year's announcement, which is here, this is the 2023 targets, which we are already aware. But last year when the announcement was made in 2024, the number was 109,020. Okay, but it has now been increased to 110,770. About 1,000 people increased in that. So express entry, that number, at least somebody will get some benefit, right? 1,000 people will get some benefit. So that's a good one. But as I said, Atlantic immigration program was 11,500. That has now been reduced to only 6,500. It has been reduced by 5,000. That's a very big number for Atlantic immigration program to lose out. So if you are now running towards Atlantic provinces, thinking that Atlantic immigration program might be a solution, then well, think about it again, because that might also be closing in very soon. So with these limited numbers, you have to sort of make sure that you get you lock it in sooner than later. Another change over here is in the economic pilots. Now, the economic pilots include your caregiver program, your agri-food pilot. It includes your RNIP as well as any new economic pathway that might come up. For example, the municipal nominee program, which at some point of time that will be announced. Those numbers are also included in this. Now, as you can imagine, it's not a very big number. RNIP quota is only about 2,500. Caregivers is roughly about 2,700, or it might increase to 3,000. Total. And then the remaining will go to the economic mobility pathways, and that's pretty much it. So that's 10,000 for you there. Provincial nominee programs have stayed put at 110,000. Thank God for that. I was hoping for it to be increased, but it did not increase. It stayed at 110,000. The provincial nominee programs is a combination of everything. Business immigration, entrepreneur immigrations that is there within the provincial nominee programs. Any program that is linked to express entry, that is included in this 110,000. Any non-express entry. For example, Saskatchewan has two programs, right? OID and EE. both of them are included in their total quota. For example, Ontario has employer job offer stream, international student stream, master's PhD stream, human capital priority stream, and their total quota is roughly 16,000. That is included in this. All 16,000 is included in this. If I take you back to this number so that you understand this better, this 110,770 is for all express entry, includes Canadian experience class, includes federal skilled worker, includes federal skilled trade categories. And since now IRCC is conducting draws on category based, that is also included in this, because just because they have category based draws does not mean that those numbers will be separate. All of them are included in federal high skill categories. So this is the number for this year, 110,770. And of course, then there is 1110, which is for provincial nominee program. Now, considering that a lot of these provincial nominee programs are linked to express entry, and because they are linked to express entry, I give usually about 40 to 45%. So roughly 50,000 invitations, 40 to 45 to 50,000 invitations, or rather 45, not invitations, 45,000 to 50,000 people from the provincial nominee program quotas will be added to this number, so that would then become the express entry quota. Again, this number is not the number of ITAs, guys. Please do not confuse this. This is the number of people. One ITA could mean several people. One ITA could basically mean, if you're a family of 4, one ITA is equal to 4 successful people, which will account to this number of 110,770. So never ever think that this is the number of ITAs. This is the number of people. Okay, ITAs is different. All right, so just to clarify that. But let's quickly look at the family immigration as well. Total economic is 281,000. If you try to add these numbers, they will not add up. There will be a gap of about 33,000 people. Now, these 33,000 people is expected to be the Quebec immigration, guys. So that is the average number, and that's where the number you will find the gap as. But for family, for spouses and children, this year it's 82,000. And for parents, grandparents, it's 32,000. That number has gone up. Again, that number is, the number has remained the same. Last year, it was 34,000 as announced for 2023. Let me just take a look. That's where it is, right? It was 34,000 as announced last year. This time it has been reduced by 2,000, and that 2,000 has gone here. Last year, this was 80,000. This year, they have increased this to 82,000. Of course, the total number remains the same. They've just moved 2,000 people from parents, grandparents to spouses and partners. Refugees and protected persons, no changes here, no changes here, no changes here, no changes here, which is a bit surprising, because they have been talking a lot about, they have given 15,000 quotas to the US. They have given they have announced 10,000 to Uyghur Muslims. They are also looking at the current situation in Palestine. They have announced Afghans, some relief for Afghans. So I'm not sure where all these different relief factors that they have announced, where are they going to fit in? But apparently in the note below, that's what it says, that it includes the admissions from Canada's response to situation in Afghanistan, as well as commitment to Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims. But as I said, I'm not sure where they're going to fit in all the numbers that they have committed to, because these numbers don't really add up very well. And if at all they have committed these numbers elsewhere, but the recent spate of visit visas that were issued before the 16th of January, where they gave blanket approvals to so many people without really checking whether those people will leave Canada or not, there has been an increase in the asylum claims. There has been an increase in refugee claims for people who are entering Canada on arrival at the airports. Where will those people go? Because there isn't enough quotas for even refugees or protected persons. So overall, this is the way the things are looking at this point of time. The total refugees and protected persons, 76,000, no changes there. Total humanitarian and compassionate, 13,750, again, no changes there. Year on year, I don't see much happening in terms of increasing. The numbers have been kept same. So if for 2025, it remains at 500,000 from if it remains 500,000 to 2026, after the same number being in 2025, then all those international students who are now coming to Canada, who are now thinking that if they come to Canada now, they will then have work permits, then they will be able to apply for PR. Well, they should realize that the journey ahead is going to be very, very, very difficult, because with these numbers being restricted, I wouldn't say restricted because 500,000 is still a big number, but with these numbers being identified as, I mean, the number of people who are coming to Canada as temporary residents, they are not increasing, or rather they are increasing much faster and much larger in number than the actual quotas. For example, last year between 500 to 600,000 international students, this year 900 international students. In the span of 2 to 3 years, they expect nearly 1.4 to 1.5 million international students. Where are the quotas for the PR, which will accommodate all of these people? That's the reason, if you heard, and I will replay this one for you because this is very important for you to understand.
Citizenship. Now, we have to be a little more clear that saying, for example, if you're an international student, you're there to study, does not necessarily guarantee you a path to permanent residency, a job, or Canadian citizenship. Now, the complete reverse of that argument is not necessarily true as well. I mean, the reality is we aren't here simply to get some 40,000 a year from people and see them fritter away and contribute their talents elsewhere. So
even if you're spending $40,000 a year and coming to Canada as an international student, of course, there is no guarantee to become a permanent resident. But if your skills are needed, if they are priority occupation, then you might find a home here. But in most cases, if you're an international student considering Canada, just because you want to become a PR, think again. It's going to be a very, very tough route ahead. Other than that, if you are still on the fence, then French. I mean, one thing has been made very, very clear, and this was also made very clear in the update. Let me just pull that up for you so that you can see that as well, in which they have also indicated the categories, right? And the categories have remained the same. I'm just going to pick that up and see if I can find that page for you. Yes, it is here. This is the notice that has been issued today. And here itself, they have been talking about the labor force gaps in critical sector. And these categories have again been mentioned. It does not mean that they are confirmed, but these categories have been mentioned. Health science, technology, engineering, mathematics, which is STEM, then the trades, transportation, and agriculture. So it is my assumption that these categories will continue at least for some foreseeable future. Of course, French, as you now already by now know, that will have a very heavy benefit. If at all you have studied French, if you've included that, then that will certainly take you a long way. But other than that, these categories will continue to be included because these are identified as critical sectors. And therefore, if Canada is what you're still thinking, if Canada is what you are aspiring for in terms of the permanent residence and citizenship at a later date, then French should be on top of your mind. Other than that, you can still come to Canada as an international student. There is no problem with that. But choose to study programs that will greatly matter to you. Just because you have done 12th and straight away after completing your 12th +2, you come to Canada and think you will do a 2-year diploma and that you will be able to get a permanent residence pathway. It's not impossible, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And the reason why it will be difficult is because the scores, you're just not going to be able to score that high. If you come to Canada after your +2, you complete a 2-year diploma, then your first priority should be to identify an occupation which will give you the advantage within these category-based draws. Or for example, in Ontario, you have a STEM category draw, or you go into tech, or you go into healthcare, or you identify these programs. So if you're struggling with your CRS scores, identify the occupation if you're already inside Canada. Now, there has been a lot of talk, and I want to address that one because somebody here said, just want to be clear about CEC. Will they start the CEC program? Well, they never, again here, what about the questions like CEC? So first thing everybody needs to understand, CEC has not been stopped. CEC continues. Every time an all program draw happens, CECs are included. The problem is you have begun to expect a specific CEC draw, which was absolutely COVID related only. During the period of COVID, okay, they could not get people from outside Canada because of the travel restrictions. Therefore, they had a program called TR to PR, right, where they were able to, offer permanent residence to everybody, almost everybody who were temporary residents in Canada. They also conducted a draw of 27,000 people in Canadian Experience class. The idea was that because you are inside Canada, you will be able to transition into permanent residence and there as a permanent resident, and they will be able to meet their annual immigration quotas without having to rely on the fact of getting people from outside Canada. That was the only reason that they were conducting CEC specific draw. Therefore, if you are still expecting CEC draw, then I don't know what to tell you, because at no point of time has IRCC otherwise conducted a CEC specific draw. It was only and only done during COVID. Once that COVID situation was done and gone with, they stopped. Therefore, continuing to hope for a CEC specific draw does not help you. Instead, you should work on ways to improve your skills, improve your scores, figure out different. Because at the end of the day, when you are a Canadian Experience class, you still are in a better position than a federal skilled worker. Why? Because you get additional points for your Canadian work experience. That by itself gives you that huge advantage. Mind you, 35, 40 points for the first year of work experience, additional points for your second year of work experience, then having an access to the PNP programs because you're inside Canada, having access to the employers because you're inside Canada. That is a huge advantage over anybody who's outside Canada and applying as a federal skilled worker. So yeah, at no point of time has IRCC said anything specific about, oh, we will conduct CEC draws or we will stop CEC draws. I mean, I'm not saying CEC draws cannot happen. Please don't get me wrong, right? And of course, CEC draws can always happen. They can wake up tomorrow and do another 30,000 kind of a draw and invite only CECs, of course. But to expect that is where I think you're getting it wrong. Don't pin your hopes on that expectation because it might not happen. You will continue to be disappointed and at the same point of time lose very, very valuable time. So maybe, probably look at that again and then realize that at every single point of time when the draws are happening, CECs are included. It's actually the CECs who are scoring that high because only then, not only do they get points for Canadian work experience, they also get additional points for skills transferability if they have work experience in Canada and outside Canada, or if they have work experience in Canada and a higher CLB IELTS scores. So in all these combinations, they do pretty much have a huge advantage. So probably give that a thought again. Lots of other questions, but pretty much the same STEM draw in future. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I anticipate a STEM draw because one thing we have to also understand that category-based draws are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They will continue to have category-based draws. What that will then do is put a pressure on regular draws because, for example, if they now have to issue 100,000 invitations in a year, you can be absolutely certain that a big chunk is going towards the PNPs because that is the commitment that they have towards the PNPs. So expect, nearly 25 to 30% of that going towards the PNPs to clear those. In addition to that, you will also see a chunk going towards the category-based draws, a big chunk going towards the category-based draws. And then the remaining is where the regular express entry draws will happen. And because that the number of invitations now for the regular express entry draws will be lesser, expect the scores to be higher. I mean, it's simple math, right? And as far as category-based draws are concerned, like guys, okay, this is where you need to take advantage of the category-based draws. 6 months, that is the work experience you need. And I've been saying this ever since the categories, we have come to know of category-based draws, that just get 6 months of work experience and you could absolutely be in one of these draws and getting invited. We have seen some ridiculous kind of scores, right? 350s for the agriculture. We have seen very low scores for healthcare from Ontario. We have seen low scores for French categories. We have seen very low scores for transport categories. Taking advantage of these options should be foremost on your mind. So yeah, French categories, get the 6 months of work experience, but expecting that the regular express entry draw scores will come down or they will be on the lower side, that is not something which I would suggest. Just be mindful. I mean, it's simple math. It's not complicated. This is not rocket science. It's demand versus supply. The demand is huge. It's extremely high. The supply is only 485,000, of which most of them are towards the family and refugees and protected person. Out of 485, the actual number you're looking at is about 220,000 only. For 220,000, what do you think are the chances? You guys are smart enough, right? So you understand that better. That's basically all that I have to add today. There are plenty of questions. Please, by all means, post them in the comments below. I'll come back and try and answer as many as I can. Thank you for joining in. This was the most recent update on the latest immigration quotas in Canada. And yeah, they've remained the same. That's the latest. Guys, stay safe, take care, and I shall see you next time from Saturday. That's when we'll do a live stream, talk more about it, and of course, at length, answer all your questions. Good night and take care.